Yeah, more people are joining, so we'll just wait for more people to join. There's always the latecomers.
We need some background music, Juliet. That's what we should have had.
I know. We looked at
a soft rock or something.
I was hoping you might sing, Joe.
No chance.
No, you can't. You can't. We looked at the waiting room and whether you can do background music. No, I would. Everybody would leave if I started to sing. I really, my children die when they hear me even open my mouth. And I did think this is one of the things I might do. I saw somebody linked in with me who helps people who can never sing to sing, and I thought maybe this is my time. Because I am
extra string to the bow. We'll be singing.
Oh,
this could be a choir, couldn't it? If everybody started singing.
The virtual choir, yes.
We have started that. We have got one of those going at the moment. The virtual choir. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. We have a choir anyway at PwC, and it's and we've started to do it virtually so they can catch up, and there's somebody at home playing the piano and you all sort of learn a song in the evening together, but it was just pushed out to our community as well, so I do a pantomime with PwC, so it's just been pushed out to them as well to join.
Kirsty would like to join the choir.
Well, auditions are now, so
okay, well, maybe we create a 2 to 3 days choir. I'm open to anything, as long as I could be the conductor, because nobody would want me to sing. Nobody. Okay.
We need percussion. You can give the rhythm behind.
Or the tambourine or something, or the triangle.
Finger snaps.
Okay, right. We've still got. I'm going to give it 2 more minutes because people are still coming on.
No problem.
How do you do you just use Google Hangouts or Zoom or something to do the choir?
To do the choir, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We do Google Hangouts. You can have up to, I think they've just increased it. I think there's now 200 or even more.
250. Google have just given the enterprise.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. I've not actually been to one yet, but I've heard from friends that it's great fun, and they are really good musicians that are joining it as well, that have just been playing in the background. I love how different people are approaching this. It's just brilliant. All the things that you're seeing is great.
Yeah, the innovation is amazing.
It is.
Okay, I think we're going to kick off because everybody has still got lives to lead, and we'll get going. So I just want to start with a very warm welcome to you all on this gorgeously sunny day, and I hope you and your families are all safe and well. We have all at turbocharged speed been catapulted into a world of not only remote working, but a world which feels quite surreal, and one where we are rapidly trying to make sense of what the government is saying to us on a daily basis and how this translates practically and emotionally to running our businesses, taking care of our families, which have been knitted together at a rapid rate of knots. I would just like to start with 2 really interesting statistics. Did you know that at the moment, 1/3 of the world's entire population is currently in lockdown at home, which translates to about 2.5 billion people? In contrast, the Office of National Statistics predicted that come 2020, as their main job, 1.5 million people would be working from home in the UK, and that is double the amount that were working from home 10 years ago. So the coronavirus has forced us all to live and work in extreme circumstances. And whilst only naturally we are all looking at how we survive the next few months, it is important that we keep in perspective that this is not the norm. However, due to the advancement of technology, working from home, and productively so, is rapidly becoming the norm. And the gift that I hope we all take from the COVID-19 is that we all become more adaptable and flexible going forward, as we prove that it is all doable. And we've got to remember that our children will also be back at school. The aim of this webinar is to help us all stay connected, keep our sanity, and feel supported and inspired to take on new challenges, innovate, and thrive at remote working. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Juliet Turnbull, and I'm the founder and CEO of 2 to 3 days, a purpose-led company whose mission it is to advance women's equality through the power of flexible working. We are growing and nurturing the country's largest online community of highly capable women who want to pursue their careers on a flexible basis. Our platform enables companies to advertise their flexible and remote working jobs directly to a captive audience of experienced female talent. I myself have been working remotely for 18 years. That was a frightening figure that I had to work out the other day. And my entire team have been working remotely and flexibly for 4.5 years. But enough about me. Today, I'm joined by 3 amazing women who are all brilliant examples of how their businesses thrive through remote working and how they are able in these challenging times to draw on their experience and expertise to take care of their staff and clients. In the next 45 minutes, they will share with you their thoughts on what is going on and their top tips and advice for thriving through remote working. So let me do a quick intro. We have Katherine Murphy, who is the One Firm Talent Lead for PwC. We have the lovely Jo Garrity, who is the founder and managing director of the Culture Consultancy and co-author of Building a Culture of Innovation. And we have Annie Auerbach, who is the co-founder of Starling, a culture and insights agency, and also the author of Flex, the modern woman's handbook, a revolutionary guide to living and working on your own terms. So before we get started, I just want to provide you with some webinar housekeeping. Everyone's microphone will be on mute other than the panelists. Sorry, I can't talk. And please, as we go through, ask as many questions you want by clicking on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen, and I will do my best to pick these up and weave them into our conversation. The webinar is also being recorded, and afterwards we will send the recording to you. So starting off with you, Annie, would you like to introduce yourself and give your take on what is really going on out there in the world today?
Sure, thanks Julia, and hello everyone. This is a really great chance actually to chat and share tips. As Juliet said, my name is Annie Auerbach. I'm the author of this book, which is called Flex, and I have been working flexibly in various different guises, working remotely or part-time or having a portfolio career for 20 years. So beat you in 2 years, by 2 years, Juliet. And so much of it has been ups and downs and difficult. And there's been so many barriers along the way. And it has been incredibly weird, actually, seeing something that I've campaigned about for so long, switching into the norm. I say the norm because we're all doing it, but it's not normal yet by any means. And I think we're all going through a transition, depending on our circumstances, whether we have children at home or whether we have a partner, whether we're alone, whether we're single parents. So there's plenty of different challenges as we work through it. My other hat that I wear is that I am the co-founder of a business called Starling, which is a cultural insights agency. We help brands like Nike and Unilever and Google understand and navigate cultural change. And prior to COVID-19, all of the pointers I felt were pointing us towards flexibility in terms of the way we live our lives, both at work and our approach to our broader holistic life. Whether that be the technology that we use and we're all using now, whether that be changing makeup of modern families, whether that be the fact that current working cultures push us towards presenteeism, bums on seats and burnout. And so it felt like prior to all of this, we were reaching a tipping point and we needed a change. And so now I think it's a fantastic time, as Juliet said, to think about, as we go through this transition, it is about survival mode at the moment and how we can make things work, but it's a massive opportunity to thrive, which is why my book is called Reinventing the Rules for a Smarter and Happier Life, because I do believe once we fall into our rhythms, that this is a profoundly great way to work, and it's a real boost to society, and I'm sure we'll discuss all of that, but that's my perspective.
Thanks, Annie. And Jo, over to you.
Hi, I'm Jo Garrity, co-founder of Culture Consultancy. So normally in our daily life, we're doing big culture change programs, employee experience, leadership and manager development. And, you know, a lot of what we see is really across the board. So from, you know, before COVID-19 was really the broad spectrum of people who had fully embraced flexible working and totally understood it and you know, knew what it was all about, right through to the rigid, old school kind of model of where we're never going to do this. And so one of the things that's really interesting as we're helping our clients now is obviously some can switch very easily because they can say, well, we've always had this in place. We've got the technology, we've got the know-how, our leaders understand how to lead and how to manage those people who aren't sitting together in their desks, right through to the businesses that have never done it and didn't embrace it and haven't got that. And you can, it's really stark, the contrast between people that just kind of go, right, this is the new way of working, this is the new normal, let's get on with it, we're ready to go, more or less. You know, some of them have had to increase the number of conference call lines they have and, you know, invest a little bit more heavily in the tech, but pretty much they're ready to go, versus those that just are really grappling with where do I even start? How does this work?
And Jo, on that, are they grappling from a mindset perspective more, or that they just haven't put the structure and processes in place?
It's a little bit of both, actually. So a lot of it is that, you know, the technology's there, the technology isn't there, rather, the processes aren't there. It's always been that classic, you know, come over and see me at my desk and sort such and such out, you know, just doesn't work anymore. So how are we actually going to do that? And some of it is the managers in particular are just not geared up to manage a remote team. So it's been that I can see everybody, I can see what they're doing, they're here with me, my door's always open, you can come and ask me a question, and suddenly, oh, I can't see you, I don't have a door. And so, you know, building the trust, first of all, I trust that you are going to deliver. You know, being more output based, you know, this is what you need to get done. I don't really care when you do it or how you do it, you know, this is what you need to do. Empowering people to do their work and to, you know, to trust that they will get it done, but actually empowering them to get on with things and to make their own decisions. Because if you're stuck in the old world and the manager, everything went through the manager or filtered through somebody, you know, we haven't really got time to do that anymore. So that is a completely different way of working, and you're going to have to empower people to make some decisions themselves, and that's tricky for people. They're struggling.
Yeah, very interesting. We'll come back on that, but let's introduce Katherine. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
I can indeed. Thanks, Juliet. So yeah, I'm Katherine Murphy. I've been working at PwC for 13 years now, a little over. And as Julia said, I'm the one firm talent lead. So first of all, what do we actually mean by that? So many of you will know that PwC has lots of different lines of service. And the programs that I look after are where people actually sit centrally and they can be deployed across all the different lines of service. And the main one that I look after is the flexible talent network. So I specifically work with the business to identify key roles that can be done flexibly and challenge the business in terms of how we can actually be pushing more and more of those roles to a challenging base, to challenge what we actually mean by the norm, and that we actually can do more of them, not necessarily from the 9 to 5. We can do them on different hours, different days. So we've identified quite a lot of roles already in PwC that can be done this way, and then we're looking at different ways that we can actually launch that message out into the network to reintroduce people back into the world of work in that flexible way.
Brilliant, thank you. Jo, can I come back to you? I think it's really interesting when you're talking about how we empower people to work more remotely. What are the key messages that you've been giving to your clients?
I think the trust piece is a big one. So I think if you're very clear, you know, when someone's sitting at home, you know, they're used to sitting with their colleagues and they're suddenly sitting at home kind of going, well, what is it I'm supposed to do? And obviously a lot of this depends on, you know, your level of seniority in the organisation and where you sit and whether you're the manager or you're being managed, etc. But one of the key things we're telling people is that communication is absolutely key. So, you know, people always think that they're communicating well and they're communicating enough, even, you know, in the old world order, and actually most of the time that wasn't true then. And it's even more crucial now that we're in this situation where you don't necessarily see people face to face. I mean, I encourage people to have the video on when they do video conf, but not everybody does. You don't pick up on the subtle cues. You can't see, you can't see their face, you can't see how they're feeling, you can't see their body language, you know, so communicating with people is just, you know, number one in terms of not just how are you, but also this is what I need you to do, this is what's expected of you, making sure that those expectations are realistic. You know, it's quite clear that we're not, I think it's not very likely we're going to be able to deliver the exact same quantity of work that we could deliver when we were all sitting together, or some people were working flexibly and some people were in the office or something, you know, and the fact that we're going through this crisis phase. So ordinarily in a remote working scenario it might be possible, but people are struggling. You know, I have my 8-year-old at home that I'm part-time homeschooling, you know, so we're juggling. So companies, you know, employers need to be realistic about how much people can achieve and set that. So what's expected from you, is that realistic? You know, when do you think you can get it done? But that constant communication of checking in with people to see how they are, I think is the piece that's going to get everybody through this.
Sure. And Kat, from the work you and I've done previously together, can you give a bit of background as to PwC are very much trailblazing the way of flexible working and remote working. Can you share with everybody what PwC have done to really support the communication piece and empower people to work remotely?
Sure, absolutely. So as I said, we're looking at specific roles that can be done flexibly, but the key thing that PwC did a few years ago now was they introduced this concept of everyday flexibility. And that was for every single employee. So it took out that kind of pigeonholing of people that worked part-time and pigeonholing of there's only that group that they have to leave at 4 o'clock because of whatever requirement. Instead, it allowed everybody to work flexibly depending on what client commitments they had and what they're required to do during the day. So what do we mean by everyday flexibility? It's literally you can work when you want to around your commitment. So for example, if you are one of those people that wants to log on early, do some emails, but then have a break in the afternoon and then log back on, absolutely fine. You can then do logging on later and working later, etc. As long as you are communicating with your teams, communicating with your clients, that everyday flexibility is exactly what it says. But it's key that it was actually given to absolutely everyone in the firm, and we actually were promoting calling people out when they weren't doing it. So you could work from home when needed. You didn't have to come into the office. And alongside that, the technology was massively ramped up. So over a year ago, there was a big investment by the firm as a whole globally to commit to $30 billion into technology to allow for things not to break down then when you were remotely working. So whether that be that our desktops would work in wherever location we're as long as we've got that internet connection, to actually having the face-to-face interaction that is of a really high quality, to be able to share screens so that you still feel like you have got that connection with people. That was done hand in hand. But then the last thing that was done, so it was the first thing was the fact that it was available to everybody. The second thing was the technology, but then at the same time, it was promoted in every form of communication. So there's over 20,000 employees in PwC just in the UK alone. And it was very important that this was a key message that had to go out. So there was videos done in terms of how people are using it from all walks of life, all grades. It was very much pushed down from our management that they were doing it, that they were leaving early to go to children's sports days, but also then being pushed up as well. So you had a way that if you felt like your managers were not on board with the everyday flexibility, you had a way of actually calling that out. So those were the three things that really made the difference to personally my way of working, that everyday flexibility for every single employee, the technology, and then that cultural shift as well, that it wasn't recognized that it would be done overnight. It was very much that we are going to do this in a process way. And I suppose that's kind of what COVID-19 has done. Overnight, lots of people had to change. And it's now understanding, well, how do we actually work together about that?
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, Kat, because I think that the everybody piece, because even recently we had a company that was struggling to allow any kind of flexible working. And the thing that tipped the balance was that a man resigned saying that he wanted to work flexibly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole thing kind of escalated. So the minute it became it wasn't a women's issue, it wasn't a childcare issue, it was I'm somebody that wants to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It shifted the whole mindset, and now they're like, oh yeah, okay, we're completely on board with it.
But
Absolutely.
if we bring it back to remote working, Annie, you've trumped me on being two years ahead of me in working remotely. What would you say are the key opportunities that people, bearing in mind we're still in the, we're all in the shock state and can't quite believe it state of coronavirus. But for those of you who are listening who are not such experts in remote working, Annie, what would you say are the fundamental things that one needs to put in place so that you don't go mad, but you stay productive? We'll get on to the fact that we're under extreme situations with us all having our children and our husbands and wives at home as well, which it's not normal. But what are the core fundamental stakes in the ground? I know what I would do, but what would you would say to everybody in order that you stay and you do thrive when you're working remotely?
Okay, so I'll do as you suggest and try not to think about it through the lens of COVID-19, because that changes things a lot, actually. But so remote working, in other words, not working from the office, has been actually for the last 20 years the exception to the rule. It's been something that's been granted to the individual almost as a special occasion. You shouldn't share it, you shouldn't tell anyone about it, because if you tell everybody then everyone will ask for it and it will be something that will open the floodgates and never be able to stop. So it was always felt something that felt under the surface and a bit secretive, which was profoundly problematic, because if remote working becomes something that's on your own individual shoulders, you're not really supposed to talk about it, and you're not really, and you just have to sort of get on with it, it becomes very, very difficult to make work. What you need are the systems and the structures in place around you which help you make it work, which is everything you were just talking about, actually. So the notion of open and honest communication, everybody should know where everybody is in the team, and feel completely able to know when they can get in touch and when somebody is not working, for example, if they're working a 3 or 4 day week.
Can I just interrupt there? What is good, open and honest communication? What are the and Kat and Joe, chip in here. What are the really fundamental things? For instance, my husband, if I just interject, he's in his late 50s. He's always worked from an office. He was one of the diehards on the tube last week, wanted everybody in the office. And I gave him a few pointers of things to do that just hadn't even occurred to him, because he's old school and has always gone into the office. So what would you say are the fundamental, when you talk about communication, what are the fundamentals that you should everybody do? Like, for instance, start the day with everybody on a phone call at 8 o'clock or 8:30 or 9 or whenever you agree.
So I feel that one of the things that happens, and has particularly happened, is all the routines and rhythms have gone out the window.
Yes.
So the day stretches ahead. It's an amorphous blob. What are people supposed to be doing? When are they supposed to be doing it?
Yeah.
So absolutely establish new rituals and routines as you go through the day and through the week. What are the new rhythms of the week? So for example, if you think about the week as a flow, Monday could be about logistics and making sure everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what they have to do for the week ahead.
Yeah.
As we were saying before, it's not about a daily tick list of tasks, because we're all going to be incredibly distracted, not only by our children running around, but by our anxiety about what the hell is going on at the moment.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for us to focus on outputs and outcomes rather than inputs and ticking tasks. Tuesday could be more of a exploratory day where people are a little bit more free. You could think of times throughout the day where everybody is logging on at the same time, or you could think of more asynchronous ways of communicating via Slack to make sure people are feeling part of a team, not feeling isolated, not feeling alone, not feeling like little atoms floating around.
Very good. And Kat, what would you add to that? Because I think how is PwC tackling this how are you tackling it on a national scale as a business, and how are you looking after your team?
I think we almost need to do a BC of before COVID, and then now that we are in this COVID state as well, how are we dealing with it? So I think
let's have the BC bit first.
BC. So we all have a diary that is accessible by everyone. So I think actually the first bit in terms of how do you actually communicate when you're available, especially given that technology makes us available literally 24/7. So we are actively encouraged to set up our calendars to block off certain times. So when we start, so if you do start earlier, if you do start later, to block out certain periods that you are available for work, and everyone can see that. You can also actually set some meetings in your Google Calendar as well that are private, so people can see when you are doing some meetings. But if you are having private meetings for confidential reasons, obviously people don't need to see that, but they can see that you are busy in there. So that's what we kind of have always done. The other things that we've done is set up group chats. So with my specific team, there was a constant chat that people would be able to message, because we do work remotely in terms of different offices. So even BC, not all of us were based in the one London office. There was a few of them in the Birmingham and East Midlands office, and a few of them in Manchester. So I was still able to connect with them all with jokes and with laughter through that chat. So those were there already. So that people would be able to go into my diary and see, right, I just want to put in 10 minutes with Kat. They would be able to do that. And then I think now that we're in the COVID situation, you're absolutely right, Annie. Everyone that used to work in this way kind of first of all went, this is completely different because everybody's doing it with me, and got into a bit of a panic. And it's now almost reassuring people to go back to that structure, because as kids respond really well with structure, we all do as well. But making more of that structure now in terms of, for example, one of the directors that I worked through, to my boss, she announced literally last Friday when the schools were closing, just so you all know, I am blocking time out. My secretary is blocking time out to be with my children, because I cannot be the same amount of time available that I used to be. But she was very open with that, and we totally all understood it. So saying to all of her senior managers, right, just so you know, this is why meetings are going to be moving around. But being upfront, and I loved the fact that she said, because I am going to be with my children that I am homeschooling and just need that time with them. We have actively then encouraged people to add some time in for personal exercise. We only get one time outside. Use it wisely, people. So we have actually actively encourage them all to do that. Again, they can make it private so we don't all see it. We don't necessarily need to see what everybody is doing, but being quite open with people that they are allowed to do that. And I think that's what COVID started to do. It's like the extra pressure that, well, we know that you're not going to have any other commitments externally anymore because we're all staying at home, but it's even more important now to have that me time, and whether that be going for a walk, being with your children, being with your partner, whatever it is, being allowed to do it. And then the other things that we've done is, so every morning we are part of a wider team that's actually around 100 people. So every morning there is a virtual chat that people can do it was a walk. So if you want to do your walk virtually with people whilst you're talking, you can do, and a virtual lunch. So everyone can dial into that, or as many people that they want to can dial into that, and literally just have normal conversations, a bit like you would do if you went to the work canteen.
Yeah. And Jo, how important is it that calling on something that Kat always talks about calling it out, that the line managers and the senior managers really do lead the way on this?
Yeah, it's very important. And I think in my BC world, if you like, it was more about making it a normal part of the culture. So even if not everybody in the team was working remotely or was working flexibly, it was an accepted norm within the culture, which meant that you understood that you didn't set up a meeting for a time or a day where you knew that that person wasn't working, or if it was a meeting that was much better to have as a face-to-face, you set it up when everybody actually was in the office, rather than just, you know, that one person being on a conference call. You know, it's different if everybody's on a call, but if everybody's in a room together and one person is on, at the end of the phone, that's actually quite difficult to navigate. So that sort of education piece, embedding it into the culture, that they were all aware. Definitely the more kind of senior people you have walking the talk, modeling the way, the better. That's always going to work well.
And what are the really good things that, you know, I hear more and more people are fed up with hearing about role models. They want to hear about real models. What are the really tangible things that our audience can take away from today and go, that's what I need to do as a leader. I need to call it out. I need to do this. What is it they need to do that really is quite transformational in increasing the mojo, the productivity of your teams when you're working remotely?
I think really quite simply being authentic and being just a little bit vulnerable, because the way things stand at the moment, none of us have all the answers. You know, I've got a whole business chat group trying to decipher what the government actually mean by, you know, 80%, and whether that's 2.5 grand net or gross or whatever. You know, we just don't have those answers. So I think, you know, be authentic, be truthful, be a little bit vulnerable, work alongside your people in terms of saying, you know, I'm with you in this, but you've got to bear with us because we just don't know, is so much better than either not communicating anything and completely backing away, or kind of trying to pretend you know something when the facts aren't there. So that kind of that real authenticity and just saying, I'm going to lead you through this, but you're going to have to trust me because I don't know, I don't have all the answers.
I would totally agree with that, Jo. I think that the temptation is to try and do business as usual and go, it's okay, we can do this, we can get through this. And the thing is it's business as unusual. It's very strange circumstances at the moment, and we're always told to bring our full selves to work. Now we can't help but bring our full selves to work because they're completely intertwined with our lives and our families and our homes. Even here you get glimpses and clues of who your people are because they're at home. It's messier, it's not as neat and productive and efficient as our modern workplaces would say life should be about. And I think it's really important to embrace that and to say we are working through a transition. It is a time of trying things out and experimenting, and if things don't work, that doesn't matter, we'll try again. And also understanding that the children, when you have parents who are in your workforce and they have kids at home, it's an entirely different circumstance, and we should probably talk a little bit about that because there's very little guidance out there of how to, you know, have a job and also be a teacher.
Well, that's a brilliant time to bring that in, Annie. And you've been doing it. Your family, if I recall correctly, went into self-isolation last week. So you're ahead of the curve. So again, you are an expert on this.
By about 3 days.
We're still in stabilizers. So how have you done the managing of the day, the time, and creating the structure? Because as you say, children, and Kat, you brought up on this, that children need structure and boundaries. We all do. What are your top tips to share that other people are still grappling to get their heads around how you still do your work and manage your family?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say, yes, absolutely. Children do need some kind of structure, and they're going to be very anxious as well. I mean, it's a weird time for them. They need to feel, you know, we all need to get our work done, but ultimately the biggest thing here is we need to reassure our kids and say it's okay, and we're here, and we're available to you sometimes, and you know, we want to help you through this. I start the day with sitting around over breakfast. Well, first of all, I start the day with Joe Wicks. have you been doing Joe Wicks's live exercise class with kids at 9 a.m. because it's brilliant. It kind of starts the day with a smile, and you feel like you're getting on the same page as the nation. So it's a nice thing to do. But then we sit down and we kind of work out, they write their own timetables, rough timetables, because it's quite important to bring them on board, not tell them what to do, but try and get them to do some self-directed learning and so on. Be really flexible about it, because it's not going to happen exactly as it's written down on the page. Negotiate if you have a partner at home, negotiate with, and you're both working from home and you both have kids, negotiate with them of who's doing what bit of the day, and be aware that in the research that I did for the book, if you're in a heterosexual couple, it is more likely that the women will carry the emotional load at home. In other words, the childcare and the chores, and that might fall naturally here as well. And it really can't, because there's two people working from home if you are both working, and you do need to sit down and navigate those and have really honest conversations about how you distribute all of that stuff. So that conversation needs to happen.
Yeah, and I for my 2 pennies worth, just a little, my 13-year-old is currently doing the ironing whilst I'm on this call. But it was the fact that when I tried to do it, I've got 2 teenagers, and when I tried to sit down and do let's have some sort of structure, because they're teenagers, they were like, no way. But what it came back to was self-responsibility, and we said, look, you've got to do these things during the week, you've got to do exercise, you've got to do chores, you've got to be on, you've got to have your screen time, guys. But it was about them working out when they wanted to do it, which is a bit like coming full circle through the comment you made earlier, Joe, about empowering your staff to trust that they will get it done in the right time frame. And Annie, as you said, rather than working on daily outputs, because the quantity of work that we're going to be able to do, which is something that Joe picked up on, might not be as at the same pace as we're used to, that you extend it over a week and build in that trust with your own children. Joe, how have you been managing to juggle a remote team and look after your 8-year-old?
Yeah, definitely sharing with my husband. Trying not to be too tough on myself. So we have a schedule. We're trying to fit. We sort of have blocks of things that we have to get in the week. And with the 8-year-old, I'm sort of giving her a bit of choice. I've roped in my mother, who's teaching French over Zoom as we speak.
Oh, brilliant.
Which is excellent. So just also trying to break it up with different people. She managed to tell me that she'd already be fed up of me by the end of this. So I think just kind of, so it's not always you and you're having to kind of use all your energy, or just you and your partner. The more people you can bring in, and don't be too hard on yourself. It's really tough. I read a really good post last night that just said, we're never going to do this as, teach them as well as the teachers do. We're not teachers for the most part. So and we've got a job to do on the side, and we've got other things. It's really hard. So do your best. Remember that, children are always learning. Baking a cake involves learning. So, cut yourself some slack and, try and make it as varied for you as you do for them.
And Kat, I'm interested, some of the practical stuff. 90% of all communication is non-verbal. So how have you guys really embraced the technology and cameras? The other day I was on something and all I got was somebody's ear and their nostrils, and it was really interesting looking inside their nostrils, but it wasn't very pleasurable. So it's these silly things that sometimes people are scared to even ask, and now you've suddenly been catapulted into home and you're wrestling with your camera. How do you guys get over this? What are your how would you recommend?
And I think because we've been doing it for a while, very much the first time. So I actually how many years ago was it now? So 6 years ago, I was actually in the Australian office, and they introduced Videophones a lot longer before we did in the UK. And everyone resisted the video phone. It was like, no way, to the point that most people got a post-it note and stuck it over the video so you didn't see them. And it was that kind of culture of calling people out again, but actually explaining why to do it and why it was so important. And it's exactly coming back to the fact of 90% of all communication is nonverbal. So therefore, if you are connecting with someone, just the fact that you were smiling at me as I just spoke gave me the encouragement to continue, and that I was obviously speaking on the right kind of lines, etc. So it's so important. So by explaining to people why you're doing it, I think made it a lot more important, and then leading by the examples as well. So the more that people did it, the more it became normality. So now sort of fast forward to the UK, then Google was introduced, so Google is global across PwC as well. So literally the more and more people that you were having conversations with, you were seeing them on a video, and it became almost irregular not to have your videos on. And quite often people would say, oh, come on, it doesn't matter if you're working from home, it doesn't matter if we see your pet, it doesn't matter if we see your husband or your wife walk past or your child walk past. So it was allowing people to be recognizing that their situation was not an office behind them, and quite possibly a bedroom, or quite possibly a living room with other people around them, and actually saying that up front, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And being able to kind of then acknowledge who you were and not worry about makeup and all of that kind of things as well. So we'd been doing that for a while, so it wasn't something new when COVID came in. And the last thing that we were sort of doing as well is, so a lot of people, as I say, had turned on the cameras, but there would still be the odd person, especially if you were in a group of, say, 10 people on the conference call, that wouldn't turn their camera on. And we actually started calling it out and saying, you're getting all of the interaction from us. It's really difficult if you are talking to a name, if you're giving everything and you're not getting anything back. And I actually gave that last year into quite a lot of people's feedback, that obviously in terms of your appraisals and stuff, and people really recognized it because they had not seen it from the other side. So it's just doing little things like that as to how important it is from both sides to be able to have this virtual connection. So I think the video is the really key one, but then obviously having things like your chats on to be able to connect, etc. as well. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can still have that connection with people, you can share your screen with people, etc., etc.
Yeah, and that also is, because 90% of all communication is non-verbal, having that eye-to-eye contact over a video screen is so important, isn't it? Because you will still pick up people's energy, or a twitch or something. There'll be some movement that you will get that you'll think that they're not happy with that.
Yep, absolutely.
And you sense it, and then you can take it off and have a private one-on-one conversation, or if it's appropriate, you can then do it as a team. But if you're hiding away, then if we talk about open communication, you're not being open, you're holding back. And it's very hard as a manager to help and really support people, whether it's pre or post COVID-19, if they are self-isolating.
Yep.
Do you remember the BBC clip of
Yes.
Robert Kelly? So Professor Robert Kelly, when he's being interviewed in his office, and his daughter comes in like this, and at the time it was so hilarious, and everybody was kind of shocked, but also felt very seen, because if we work from home, it's a constant threat that that's going to happen. And I think now it's so interesting because we're all Professor Robert Kelly. I mean, we are. Kids could be there, as you say, cats walking across the screen, like that. And I think what you say is really valuable, because the reason why people don't turn their cameras on is because they have a fear and a shame of their real circumstances. And if we welcome those and we say, that's okay, we're all in the same boat here, and we're all imperfect humans, and that's good. That's a good thing, because I've had client video conferences where there's been dogs barking, there's been kids having meltdown in the background, and those conversations were actually the most raw and real, and we connected really well, and we felt we made a lot of progress, and we got to the heart of matters. So it can be seen as a weakness, but I think it's a strength, because I think it's allowing us to be authentic and have honest conversations and be really accepting of who we are.
Yeah, I think it's an extension of the diversity and inclusion part of our work, right? So what we haven't fully kind of, you know, and I haven't really got an answer for it as it stands, but that, you know, some people are introverts, some people come from different cultural backgrounds, some people are different socioeconomic groups, you know, just, I think that whole, it's an extension of the how do we have an inclusive team when people really are laid bare. I mean, when you really see them close up, you know, warts and all, and that is uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of people for a number of reasons. And so it's, again, not sort of passing judgment or not saying silly comments, and it's training your team to adapt and to not react to, wow, you know, when you live in a house, you know, you live in a house and you've only got a room with 6 other people, wow, I didn't realize that was a thing, you know, just it's kind of broadening the mindset of the managers and the people running those teams and the other colleagues to kind of say, yeah, it's fine, whatever your situation is absolutely fine.
So how do you create that safe space, Jo? If you were running a workshop on the culture of trust and inclusivity, what would be the key things that you would say to line managers to be mindful of? And now that we are in these very, you know, we're all living in goldfish bowls. We're all goldfish, aren't we? Everything's on show.
Yeah.
What
a lot
would be?
of it comes back to understanding yourself, I think, and the whole sort of unconscious bias piece. Any sort of, you know, we've all got our thoughts from and our ideas, you know, formed from our own childhoods, our own lives, everything that we've experienced, and so just being aware of that is a very good starting point, so that you don't immediately kind of make an odd face at somebody going like, really, like that's what you wear when you're at home, whatever, you know, to kind of have that neutrality about you, that actually I don't, you know, I care about this person as an individual because they're part of my team, and actually I make no judgment, you know, none of these other things are relevant to me, and that takes a bit of training on yourself, right, to not impose your own view of the world on everybody else's situation. So that takes a bit of thought. I know, for example, we've got one client that, it was a really good idea on the surface of it, organised a kind of after works drinks over Zoom. Some people were playing musical instruments, some people were singing, probably having a beer, but totally not factoring in that a percentage of their population don't drink for religious reasons.
Yes,
so,
that's a very good point.
Kind of fine, but there's still source of a pressure, you know, it's weird, and you're not in the pub together, but there's still a like, I've got my bottle of beer, I've got my gin, I've got something else, but actually that's not inclusive as a call. So it's fine to have as one item that you have in the diary, but then you need to have a coffee catch up or a something else where those people could participate easily.
Yeah. And girls, what one of you, as coming earlier, as Annie said, that rather than being sort of, because we don't have the interaction of going to see clients and popping into meetings, and we're all hardwired to work in this culture of presenteeism, but if we weave in communication and trust and focus on the output and the delivery, what are the practical top tips that you can give our audience today on focusing on output rather than yes, you know, the norm of being the presenteeism, and then we do get as much work done and we are as productive as possible? What are the structures and processes that you guys have put in place? Is that one for you, Kat?
I think it's more like it has to come back to the trust first of all, and it's all. So there's kind of two ways of trusting people. You trust them because they will deliver, and then you know that you can rely on that person to always do the same things. Whereas now I think we're saying you need to go with, first of all, you trust that person to do it. And I think you definitely have to start off as that's your mantra. So you are trusting your team to get to do what they need to. And actually what I've seen in reality is people will often do more when they're working from home and when they're working remotely than when they are in the office. And it's actually doing the opposite and checking that their well-being is okay, and that they are taking those breaks and making sure that they have got that time. Because, like, as I say, we've been working like this for such a long time now that it has always been that you are able to identify how people are doing and how they're working at home based on their outputs anyway. And from what I have seen with my team, it's been the people that I've had to call in for the opposite of saying, you're doing too much, you need to take some time out for yourself, rather than you're not doing enough. Certainly that's from my perspective in terms of the team that I run.
And Annie, what would you?
Well, yeah, you were talking about productivity and how we can be productive in new circumstances. And one of the chapters that I wrote in the book is called Flex and the Body, and it's all about understanding your own circadian rhythms and whether you're a morning lark or a night owl or a hummingbird, somewhere in between. And what I would say is, yes, we do need structures, and we've talked through those, and we've talked about how to get on the same page and so on, but use this opportunity as well to shed some of the rubbish that we're quite delighted has gone away. For example, most of people's commutes are pretty tough and long and stressful, and if you're not commuting, that time is freed up. What do you want to do with it? If you're a morning lark, maybe you can start power hours at the beginning of the day where you're going to get a lot of stuff done and the kids are sat in front of cartoons or whatever. Maybe actually, if you're more of a night owl, your peak of productivity is at the end of the day, which would usually be wasted on your commute, you know, as you stick your head under someone else's armpit on the tube or whatever. So, you know, see this as an opportunity to free yourself of some of the structures that were there and in retrospect look quite absurd. Like, why do we all get on the trains and on the tubes at exactly the same time when it's so overcrowded? And if we shifted our commutes to suit our own circadian rhythms, it would actually make so much more sense. So I would say listen to your body and listen to yourself. And this is a time of national pause as everybody figures out what the hell we do, and we're quite anxious, and it's a time to reinvent, really. And we shouldn't think about productivity in the same way we always have, which, as you've just said, has been about hours spent in front of people face to face, or hours at a screen, or hours in the office, bums on seats. We should think about productivity in a much more holistic way. Think about the outcomes, not even the outputs at the end of the week, the outcomes. Like, what actually changed? What happened? How did I have some impact?
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Rebecca Harris has asked, do you think there'll be a greater understanding of flexible working and more home working post COVID-19? Or I suppose the greatest fear I have is that everybody's just going to rush back and go, yeah, it's presenteeism, we're back in the office, 9 to 5, let's go. Or do you think that finally people are going to get with it, and the old die-hard clients, Joe, who are, you know, are now going, Joe, help us, are going to get with the program? What do you think is going to happen?
I do think there will be a greater understanding, and I do think there will be more people, because I think as long as we can prove the concept that it really does work, I think, you know, lots of businesses will go, well, actually, that was absolutely fine in the end, made it work, let's do it. What I think is clear is some people have realised that it's not for them, so it isn't for everybody, and those people will quite quickly want to go back. But my hope is that on balance, there are more people able to work flexibly at the end of this, because businesses get it.
Yeah, I think also we have to separate remote working from flexible working, because they're not the same things, are they? So Kat, what would you add on that?
I think it's just, there's something quite comforting that we're all in this together at the moment. And then when we go back to our normal lives, that's going to be after COVID-19, it will just show everyone what they are capable of. So I think there's a bit that employees themselves and workers and everyone at the moment knows what you can do from working from home. So where you've previously been told, no, you can't do that, that won't work for us. Well, actually, it did work for me, because I was having to do it. So there is something about how people are going to be more empowered because they've already done it. But actually, employers as well are going to see what the impact of that will do. And I think people will be pleasantly surprised in terms of, ultimately, if people are happier and if people are actually able to work around their lives, then they are allowed to do more at work as well. And that's what I think will hopefully come out of this, because if you are able to work flexibly and remotely, you can then do things that are, and I know that you always talk about this, it's not your life, it's not your work-life balance, because your life is what you are doing and work is a part of that. Yeah. So if we are able to help with that flexibility in terms of work, ultimately, surely we can be a happier place.
Yeah. So on that, and conscious of time, if it's all about empowering people, it's all about really open communication, and it's really about building a culture of trust, what would be your 2 or 3 takeaways that you would want to leave the group with today? Because we need to close and get on with our lives and get on with schooling or doing our skipping in the back garden or whatever it might be, or taking on a client call and landing a new piece of business. So which one of you would like to go first? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but what would be your takeaways that you'd say to the group today? If you don't do anything else, do these 2 or 3 things that can really empower you and not only get you through the COVID-19 zone, but also you will be a stronger, better leader, manager, staff member as a result of doing these things. What would you all add?
I think the main one for me is we keep talking about how we can fill this extra time that we've got of commuting and how we can do all of these things and do this structure. And actually it's coming back to, we can also potentially take more sleep if that is needed. And it's something that really hit me, as I say, last night. It really hit me that I was conscious that there was a lot going on. I still had lots of work to do, but I was acutely aware that I was not performing to my best, and I went to bed, and you know what, this morning I felt like a new woman. Wow. So that would be the top tip that I would say. Don't feel that you actually have to fill in this time because we're working from home with practical stuff. Actually, it can be filled that time in with needed rest. We're told that gold medalists actually have hardwired into their system time for rest and recovery. We don't, and it's really important.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. Jo or Annie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that piece again about just don't be too tough on yourself, right? Do your best. None of us are going to do this perfectly, so I mean, just do what you can. And I think to Annie's point, work when suits you, but work to your strengths as well. So if some people are good at starting a piece of work and some people are good at finishing it, and so if you're expected to start and finish your work by yourself, phone a friend, collaborate. Don't sit there kind of trying to start something that you think, I don't know where to begin. And I think that just be a little bit more tolerant of others, because everybody is struggling and this may not be their preferred way of working. So just cut everyone a little bit of slack, I think.
And Annie, what would you add?
I would say sort of 2 things, and I'm not sure if they're contradictory, so forgive me if they are. But one thing is we are going through an odd time. It's kind of, I think some of these new ways of working and living will stick. And so I sort of feel like it's birthing pains that we're going through to potentially a new era and a new way where we'll consider different ways of working and living, and we'll prioritize things differently. So as you just said, give yourself some slack, allow yourself to work through those birthing pains. But the second thing is be ambitious about it. The title of this whole thing is How to Thrive. And I know it feels like survival mode right now, partly because we're so worried about our vulnerable relatives and so on, and just vulnerable people in general. But this is a moment of pause. This is a moment of reset. Ask yourself, how do I really want to live and work? And this is a chance to experiment and see if we can push that through.
Brilliant. Well, ladies, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and to all the lovely participants we've had. 2to3days are planning on doing some more collaborative webinars over the next few weeks, so please stay tuned. But stay safe, stay well, and we can all thrive through this, and great innovation will come as a consequence. So take care. Bye bye.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much.